What's up, you guys, and welcome back to my channel. I'm going to save my announcement that I have today for the end of the video, so definitely stay tuned for that. It is in regards to my last video and the love that you guys left on it, and that also kind of goes hand in hand with the fact that there is a pretty serious schedule change when it comes to me posting videos on this channel. So that's going to be at the end, but it has also a lot to do with why I'm able to get out this video today that I've needed and wanted to do honestly for over a year. I love doing update videos for you guys because I hate just creating a video about someone and then something huge happening in that case. I'm invested at this point. You guys are invested. And I want to make sure I'm able to share updates with you so we can follow along on what's going on, how we can keep helping families. And I just never had time to do it. So again, I'll explain more at the end of the video, but I'm so excited to be able to bring this update video to you guys today. It's a bunch of really, really big updates. I feel like the past few months with cases that I've covered, it felt like I would cover a case and like the same day I uploaded it, something insane would happen, or like within a week, and you guys would be like, you'll never believe it, through my DMs and emails. So I can't wait to share these updates with you guys. But before I jump in, I need to give a huge, huge, huge thank you to Hunt a Killer, hands down one of my favorite companies in the entire world to work with from top to bottom, for being today's sponsor. Hunt a Killer is a murder mystery subscription box that is delivered straight to your door monthly, which is my kind of thing. My life is ridiculously busy. If you haven't picked up on that yet, I homeschool both of my children. I'm obviously a workaholic. I also run basically a small petting zoo with 2 dogs, 2 parrots, a bearded dragon, 8 chickens, and 4 ducks. Plus, I'm renovating my home, which is always in some state of disaster, as well as still working on my workspace. So I've just got a lot going on, and I realized that I was not taking a lot of me time. And so Hunt a Killer has been one way that I've consistently been able to make time for myself. I sit down monthly, plan out a few days where I lock myself in my workspace with pajamas and a glass of wine and work on my box. Now, this particular season, Julie Adler unearths the remains of an actress from the 30s from her family's theater. Something that they once believed was a disappearance is now a murder, and Julie is desperately trying to get to the bottom of what happened. But unfortunately, she's also being pushed out by the board of directors. So she's really relying on you to solve this case. Each box that you receive is filled with, first of all, the most realistic things that I've ever seen, but you receive piles of documents, evidence, things like audio recordings, there's handwritten letters, there's physical items that have been found in the theater, and your job is to analyze every single thing that you receive to find things like the murder weapon, to rule out suspects, create suspect lists, and eventually find the killer. And I will say, there's definitely some tricks to some of the evidence. It's not as easy as you would think, so keep that in mind when you receive your box. Each month, more items arrive to add on to the already challenging and dynamic list of characters and information, so the entire game keeps you on your toes. It's not like a one and done deal. This piles up. You gotta keep thinking. Whether you have a monthly date night or a Zoom game night with friends, or even if you want to join their online community so you can help solve this with other members playing from all over, it's a ton of fun and it's always so interactive. Then, of course, my absolute favorite thing that I love about Hunt a Killer is the fact that a portion of proceeds from every single box is donated to the Cold Case Foundation. Right now, my subscribers can go to huntakiller.com/Danelle Hallan and use code Hallan for 20% off your first box. Again, that's huntakiller.com/Danelle Hallan using code Hallan for 20% off your first box. Thank you again, as always, so much to Hunt a Killer. And now on to the updates for today. So first, I want to cover the updates on Kevin Bacon. So I'm going to give you, if you've never seen one of my more recent update videos before, I used to actually do these live, which I really miss because we got to have conversations about the updates. But I'm going to give you kind of like a brief recap of the videos. If not, I will have a list of the people that I'm updating on in the description box with a link to their separate videos if you want to go and watch those before you see all of this. So Kevin Bacon is the first victim I'll be speaking about. So as a quick update, Kevin Bacon was believed to be murdered by a man named Mark Latunsky, who he met on Grindr. Kevin's body was found hanging upside down from the ceiling in a hidden room in the basement of Mark's home, just a day after he was reported missing. He was reported missing on December 26, 2019. He actually went missing on Christmas Eve that year from Michigan. And there's a bit more information on this case, which is equally as disturbing as all of the rest of the information that I already told you in the video. And this was a very, very difficult one. And a lot of you guys actually knew him personally or lived in the area. So Mark Latunsky came out and has stated more details about the murder, and he apparently had Kevin's body hanging above an open trap door. So Kevin's body was in the basement upside down. There was a trap door that was open directly underneath of him, so his blood was kind of pooling on the dirt below. And Mark claims that he was doing all of this to fertilize his plants. There's a whole thing when it comes to this that I'll get into in just a second that may suggest that this was an assisted suicide. So that's kind of something huge that's up in the air at the moment. Authorities have looked into all of the text messages between Kevin and Mark Latunsky. We knew that they found Kevin's phone in the car before he was found, so they've had access to these for a while, but they are finally coming out and saying there was nothing within these texts that indicated this was ever the plan, that Mark ever intended on hurting Kevin, or that Kevin, wanted this to happen, which is going to come into play and be important later. But there are even multiple points within this conversation where Kevin repeatedly asked Mark if he was going to be safe while he was with him. Unfortunately, we know that this isn't the case. Now, Mark has said that it was consensual sex, that Kevin had a specific fantasy that he wanted to play out. So according to Mark, after the consensual sex, Kevin started to talk about the fact that he had been suicidal in the past. And I don't know if he was struggling with anything in that moment. I don't know if Mark has stated that. They haven't released it, but somehow they got on the topic of making Kevin's body disappear. They apparently came up with a plan on how to get rid of his body. They wanted to create something beautiful out of it. So they were going to, again, I guess, slit his throat and drain his blood out over the soil to fertilize it so that the garden would grow better. And they were also going to take his bones and kind of grind them up and grow tulips out of them. There was a plan to also use some of his body parts to make jerky, and they were going to use his intestines to also grow like pitted fruits and things like that. We also know already, unfortunately, that Mark decided to cut off and then consume Kevin's testicles. The explanation for this we finally have. Mark stated that on a new moon, he always ate Rocky Mountain oysters, and it was a new moon that night, so he instead decided to consume the testicles. And we now have photographic evidence of this occurring because Mark has provided it. He's provided a photograph of him eating the testicles. They also, I believe, intercepted a package that was going to be delivered to Mark with a dehydrator in it. So he really was planning on making jerky. You guys, all these things that he's stating as if we didn't believe it could get any worse, what he did to Kevin. And it's very clear he was serious about everything that he said. Now, if you guys also remember, the thing that was kind of up in the air when I created the video on Kevin Bacon's murder was the fact that Mark Latunsky was deemed not competent to stand trial. And he was sent off for treatment so that hopefully in like about a 15-month time span, which was all he had, he would be considered competent for trial. And if not, basically nothing would happen. There would be no real justice for Kevin. Now, in early October, he ended up being found competent, you guys. And if you also watched my video, you would know that I did not think that was going to happen when you looked at what this man did. And the fact that his ex-husband was spoken to, his ex-husband was even saying that this is something so bizarre that he never thought Mark would do. He didn't know he was capable of things like this. It really felt like Mark snapped, like experienced some sort of mental break, and I didn't think he was going to come back from it, but I guess he's come back from it enough to stand trial. He is currently only being charged with the mutilation of a dead body because that is all they could find evidence for, and something that I found very odd is the fact that Mark's attorney asked to add an assisted suicide charge to the list. So the defense is asking to add charges. Obviously, this was denied. It's not legal for the defense, at least in this state, to add charges onto the person they're representing. And a lot of people think that's the strangest thing ever. I personally think it's because he's only being charged with mutilation of a dead body. And since he's found competent to stand trial, and I believe he'll obviously be found guilty of this, I think that Mark and his attorney are worried that there are going to be murder charges that come next because he's not been charged with murder yet, so he can be charged with it eventually. Right now, there is a lot of evidence that, according to Mark's attorney, suggests this was an assisted suicide. First of all, Kevin had antidepressants in his toxicology report, so they're using that as evidence. He also, I guess, claimed to Mark that he had been suicidal in the past. On the knife that was found in Mark's drawer, the knife that was used to stab Kevin, there also was both Kevin and Mark's DNA on the handle. However, professionals have come out and stated that it's more likely all of that was just transfer from Mark killing Kevin. So I'm assuming they would rather the charges of assisted suicide during this trial than later for Mark to be tried for murder. I will say I don't think that would go as planned anyways, just because of this information that we have. And there's obviously text messages where Kevin himself repeatedly asked if he was going to be safe. And I'm assuming it would take a lot for him to ask that so many times and be so adamant about being safe with Mark, and then all of a sudden asks him to help him kill himself. I just think that's very strange. But again, there's still plenty of evidence indicating that Mark did in fact murder Kevin. They did find Kevin's DNA on a frying pan. Again, they have the knife, they have the weapon, and then they have what Mark himself has said. He said that he stabbed Kevin at the base of the neck, right below his hairline back here, and he expected that to kill him right away. And when it didn't, he said he didn't want Kevin to suffer, so he slashed his throat. He's saying that was his act of kindness, again, and the assisted suicide, but I don't know. So because he was found competent to stand at trial, which again, many did not believe would ever happen, he showed up in court and I believe October 30th. He did have a not guilty plea entered for him, and I'm unsure when exactly the full trial begins. So I will keep an eye on that and obviously keep on updating you guys as it goes. But we are already here and I was really not sure that was ever going to happen. Now I have an update on Paul Franczak. In Chicago in 1964, Dora and Chester Franczak gave birth to their son that they named Paul Franczak. He ended up being abducted from the hospital in less than a day. 2 years later, after they kind of came to terms with the fact that they'd probably never see their son again, a boy found in New Jersey was claimed to be their son that they had been looking for. No one knew how this boy got to New Jersey, any of the details, and eventually Dora and Chester brought this young boy back home saying that he was in fact their biological son. But this was back before any DNA testing could happen, so they kind of had to take him and just hope. Now, in 2012, Paul felt like something was off. He had felt like something was off for years, so he managed to do a DNA test, and it turned out that he was not, in fact, their biological son. And he was, I think, 40-something at that point, so he had a family. He had spent his entire life believing that he was Paul Franczak. He had been abandoned by his real family, so he had no idea who they were. And so he kind of went on this search to find his real identity, which he did manage to find. That's in the video. But he also set out to find the real biological Paul Franczak. And just to make this a little less confusing, the Paul that was not biologically Paul, the Paul that lived to be Paul his whole life, kept his name of Paul Franczak. So just want to clear that up. So I stated in the video at the very end that there were some rumors going around at the time that the real biological Paul had been found in Michigan, and there was not a lot of information out about him. There was no name that was out, just that his children came forward and believed he was in fact the real biological Paul Franczak, and they were trying to get him to do something about it, and that he was struggling with cancer, and now was kind of the time to figure it out. So they have released the name of this man. The man's name is Kevin Beatty. Now, I'm getting a little bit more information about the story, but still not all of it. But it appears that his daughters believed he was the real Paul Franczak, so they decided to take a DNA test, and they got in contact with the false Paul Franczak. I swear I try to make this make sense and it still sounds confusing every time I say it, but they got in contact with him and they apparently compared DNA tests and they all came to the conclusion that Kevin Beatty was in fact the biological Paul Franczak. Now the other Paul even sent Kevin Beatty his book that he wrote about all of this and his own journey in finding his biological family. And Kevin Beatty managed to speak to Dora Franzak, so his biological mother. No one really knows at this point what Kevin Beatty, what his life has been like. Who was the woman that took him? I've heard rumors again that they know who this woman is, but she's no longer alive and they're trying to get answers. Was he given to someone else? Did he grow up having any idea that he was taken away from his family as an infant, still in the hospital? I really don't have all the answers to that. He was dealing with a lot. He was learning all this information. He was also struggling with cancer. He talked to his biological mom for the first time, and then unfortunately, not long ago, he passed away. So I'm happy that things, for the most part, sorted themselves out in the end, but I cannot imagine emotionally what he was going through right before his death. It's so difficult. However, the FBI and any local authorities still have not stated anything publicly about this. I know that they initially first heard of Kevin Beatty in 2018. I'm thinking that maybe the daughters and Paul Franzak reached out to the FBI with this information. I know that they did look into it. I don't know if they ever proved anything. I don't know if they maybe were keeping things quiet because they were trying to figure out, who took him and, what exactly happened. So if they update more on that, I will let you guys know. So it's for the most part, according to Paul and the daughters, that he is the biological son. Even Dora spoke to him, but that's not been confirmed by any authorities. Just wanted to make that clear. So now I have an update on Tamala Horsford. And this update, you guys, I am so excited about. That video gained a lot of traction, and I'm pretty sure the day that I uploaded it, it was announced that Tamala's case was being reopened, like the exact day I uploaded. And I remember sitting on my couch when you guys started to DM me about it, and I just screamed at the top of my lungs because I dug through that information so deep, and you guys watched the video and you dug into your own information so deep. And while there were definitely a lot of people that believed it was just an accident, there were so many things that were not adding up. And I personally believe that, if there isn't ever going to be evidence anything happened, then there's never going to be evidence. But I feel like it does not hurt when there are so many questionable things to reopen a case and re-examine it. So for a very, very brief review, because I'm pretty sure, did I do it in 2 parts? I can't remember. It was either 2 parts or one very, very long video. Tamala was found deceased in her friend's backyard after a sleepover in November of 2018. And it was initially ruled an accident, and authorities were claiming that she was highly intoxicated. I believe she was over 3 times the legal limit. And so their idea was that she was out on the 2nd floor balcony and fell over, landing on the ground, and she died. I went so deep into this in my video. I read every single interview, every single public police record. I mean, every single thing. It's all linked in my video as well. So if you want to look into this personally, definitely go check it out. I will have it linked down below. But there was a huge issue with missing autopsy photos. It was just a very kind of bizarre situation. Family's attorney said that the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, wouldn't hand over these autopsy photos. They were never released to the family, never released to anyone, despite it being very crucial evidence in the case, and especially because their attorney was working on it. He kind of needed that information. Now, GBI has also said that he just didn't follow protocol, and that's why he did not get them, and I still don't know if he has them. But the good thing is that GBI did state that if there was any new information, if they were presented with new evidence, they would in fact reopen the case. And we all kind of were trying to hold them to this. In my video, you guys in the comment section, people all over the world enraged about this case, were holding them to it. Once Ralph Fernandez, the family's attorney, finished his own personal look into the case, he re-looked over everything. I spoke about the letter that he released at the end of my video on Tamala. He strongly believed that this case was not given the attention that it needed, and that there was plenty of evidence indicating this could be a homicide. So he went to Forsyth County Sheriff's Department, who I believe was the original investigating agency, and they have decided to hand it over to GBI, and GBI has in fact reopened it. Clearly, there is some sort of information in there that's made them question things and second guess things. I'm not sure what exactly it is, and they're going to keep this very quiet because all of the different women and men that were at the sleepover, they all have had lawyers for a very long time. They've gone after a lot of people that have spoken out about what happened that night. So I doubt any information is going to be leaked. So we probably won't have any more updates until something happens. Either the case is closed again and it's deemed that it really was an accident, or there are charges that are made. But it's a step in the right direction, because I still cannot believe that quickly they kind of like looked into this case and immediately shut it down. The next update is on Gina Hall. And you guys, this is like another one that I just could not believe we had an update for, because it was a 40-year-old case. 40 years old. And it was right after I posted my video that this update came out, and my jaw just like hit the floor. So as a quick recap, Gina Hall was murdered by a man named Steve Epperly. She went out to a nightclub and he ended up taking her back to his friend's lake house. And she was a very responsible young woman, and she was supposed to be back home where she lived with her sister, who attended the same college as her, and she never came back. Now, Gina's car ended up being found underneath the railroad tracks. I highly recommend, after watching my video, that you listen to the audiobook Under the Trestle on this case. It's an amazing book. It tells all the information. Historical first-time situations happened in this case. But anyways, multiple people ended up coming forward, pointing the finger at Steve Epperly. He had a very serious history of violence against women, against girlfriends that he had, against just random girls that he found out on the street and, at pools, and he would sexually assault these women. He attempted to kill a few of them, they claim, and even the man whose house he was at, someone that was his best friend, ended up pointing the finger at him as well. So he did end up eventually being convicted and put in prison for the murder of Gina Hall, but Gina's remains never ended up being found. And her sister made it her life mission to find Gina's remains. They had no clue what could have happened. Her car was found underneath a railway trestle, but there was a huge river right beside it. This lake house, was she thrown out into the middle of the water there? There were just so many different possibilities. But in July of this year, portions of Gina Hall's remains were found thanks to her sister and a forensic anthropologist from Tennessee. I don't know the exact method that they used, but I know that they were working very hard to find the remains, and they ended up finding most of the bones on hunting grounds that Steve Epperly frequented, and her DNA was also found at the lake house, on Hazel Hollow Road, and Meadow Creek. So, it's very possible her remains were kind of scattered around, but most of them were on this hunting ground nearby. I was just so excited to hear this, because Gina's sister has worked so hard to figure out where she is, and the family went through so much, and it had been 40 years. And when someone's in prison after being convicted of murder and they just like won't talk, they won't even give up that last little bit, like nothing worse could even legally happen to them. It's just like them hanging on to the last few answers to torture the family. That's like the most disgusting thing somebody can do, in my opinion. And he didn't want to talk. Steve didn't say a single thing. He still wouldn't admit to the crime all these 40 years later. So I'm happy that it didn't matter if he spoke or not. It didn't matter, because they found her remains anyways. Now we are to a big one. And this again, I literally never thought was going to happen. All of these updates today were just shocks. So I'm now going to be updating on Eric Lee Franks. Eric Lee Franks went missing in Saginaw County, Michigan in March of 2011. So he came in contact, I believe he was 38 years old, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong in that, so just double check it. But he came in contact, he was married, ended up getting divorced because he came in contact with his high school sweetheart. And her name was Kendra Firmingham. It's either Farmingham or Firmingham. But either way, they had a daughter together that he never knew about. And when he reconnected with this, high school sweetheart, he was scrolling through her Facebook page and was like, that girl's birthday is from when we were still dating. Is that my daughter? And long story short, it was. So he ended up moving from his home in Ohio closer to where his daughter lived in Michigan. And the plan, at least his plan, was to meet his daughter, hopefully patch things up with Kendra, and then maybe they could live out their life happily together. But unfortunately, that's not at all what happened. Kendra was married at the time. She played it off to Eric like she was separated, or at least very unhappy. I think she even said that her husband didn't even live in the same house anymore. But that was all not true. And it ended up turning into Eric spending months in a motel, waiting to be introduced to his daughter. I think Kendra kept going back and forth saying, I don't want her, to have her whole life change. And then she would let him hang out with them, but wouldn't introduce Eric as her father. So he's just there with the whole family and knowing that he's the father of this young girl, and she has absolutely no idea. And then eventually she was told that Eric was her father, and then Eric would contact his mom constantly, and he had this whole plan. He says, oh yeah, she's officially leaving her husband. We're all moving into a house together. You probably won't hear from me for just a little while just because there's bad reception there and I'll be busy moving. But his dreams seemed to be coming true, and then all of a sudden he dropped off the face of the earth. Kendra, after this, before anyone reported him missing, apparently came and checked Eric out of his hotel. Eric was not there. She simply went to the manager and was like, he won't be returning. Grabbed all of his items from the motel. Nobody has any idea where those items went. And then Eric stopped communicating with his mother, who he called pretty frequently. He would also post a lot to Facebook publicly, pictures of him with his daughter and having fun. And then that dwindled down as well. And then people started to question things, and his mom started to try to reach out, and a lot of his friends started to try to reach out. And all of a sudden when they did that, like strange Facebook messages started going to his friends that didn't seem like him. It seemed like someone else was writing them saying, oh, I'm fine, don't worry about it, like stop asking questions. And then his mom started getting communication that way also, when he would typically always call his mom. So it seemed like someone else was pretending to be Eric to throw people off. Now, when his mom and authorities finally dug into this, he was reported missing. It was found, according to Kendra, that Eric got upset because she decided not to leave her husband, and he just drove off in the direction of California, which is what Kendra said, that he had some plan to go to California. And he did love California. He originally had dreams of living there, but it didn't work out. It was too expensive. So it seemed plausible, but also he wasn't like that. He wouldn't have done that. He loved his family. He had lots of appointments and things planned, and just there was too much going on for him to just disappear like that. Now, immediately after they claimed this is when the family found out that she was the one who actually checked him out of the motel, and then they stopped cooperating with, pretty much anyone. And the whole family, according to a neighbor, up in the middle of the night, just like packed up and moved all the way to Florida. Once they got down there, both Kendra and her daughter ended up being diagnosed with breast cancer. Like, I think the daughter was diagnosed first with this very rare form of breast cancer, and then Kendra was diagnosed next. And people were questioning if she actually had cancer or if she was just trying to like raise money. I believe she had like a GoFundMe or a way she was getting donations. And then in 2016, Kendra allegedly died from the breast cancer, but even her own attorney stated that they believed something was off. It was like a weird situation where nobody, even her family, was allowed to come to her funeral. Like, it was just bizarre. It was like Kendra's daughter and then Kendra's husband, and that's the only people that were allowed to come. But that is a whole other thing. The big update is that in early September, Eric apparently rode off in his 2001 Chevy Malibu off into the sunset towards California, and the main focus of the entire investigation was locating his car. His car was so important. They had to find it. And they repeatedly scanned his VIN number and his license plate number all across the board wherever they could. They checked at scrap yards. They checked at shops. I mean, to see if maybe any police officers had ran his tags, and it just wasn't popping up. And they thought it was so strange because they thought if something happened to him in town, someone would have ditched the car and probably taken it to a scrap yard, or, if he really was alive and well going to California, that eventually a police officer would run his plates, or, he'd get something done to his car, but it just didn't happen. So in September of this year, Eric's mom received a call about a car that was found in California. And I know you're now assuming, oh, so he did go to California. No, this is all just him. The car being found in California was a coincidence. So the owner of the car took the car to be serviced on August 31st, only 10 days after they purchased the car from an estate sale in Saginaw, Michigan. And they decided to have a Carfax pulled for it, and found who it belonged to, that it was belonging to a missing person. So this person obviously contacted law enforcement. Now, the reason that he really did this is that he was in the business of buying cheaper, used cars and reselling them. And he said that he had purchased quite a few cars that someone had died in or dead bodies had been in, maybe like from a car accident or you never know. And he knew the smell that it created in a car, and he knew like what he usually had to fix, like fixing the floorboard or things like that. And when he got this car, Eric's car, he said it smelled like a car someone had died in. It smelled like a dead body, and there was what he believed to be a large blood stain on the floorboard of the car. And you guys, as if that's not enough, like the car didn't even go far out of Saginaw, Michigan, so he definitely didn't go to California. You will never believe whose estate sale the car was found at. There is a man named Gerald Rutledge, and Gerald Rutledge was an incapacitated adult. He had something happen in his life to, where he needed adult care. And Kendra, if you remember, was in the business of taking care of incapacitated adults. And she took care of Gerald Rutledge. So the house the car was found at was someone who at the time had been in the care of Kendra. From what I'm understanding, Kendra would come to his home to take care of him. He was a very wealthy man when he passed away of old age. I think he had $2.9 million under his name. He lived in a pretty large, nice house. He had a big 2-car garage, and he obviously, couldn't get around much to check much out in the house. So I'm sure Kendra may have looked at this and been like, this is a perfect opportunity to get rid of something that I don't want anyone to find. He's not selling this house. He's not going anywhere, until he dies. So his neighbors have said that they think he didn't even know the car was in his garage because he couldn't go out there very often, and it was probably something he didn't even realize. Now, from what I'm understanding, Gerald was not someone new to the investigation. Apparently, Gerald was already connected to the case because Eric spoke about going roller skating with Kendra and a guy named Jerry, so she may have taken him out to go roller skating as some activity that they did, and that was just before Eric went missing. And then on top of that, a couple of weeks before Eric went missing as well, Kendra charged Gerald an entire year up front for services, which sent his bank and lawyers into alert and Kendra under suspicion. They thought this was strange. I personally think this was a way for her to keep an eye on the car for the following year. I think she maybe, wanted to make sure she was there to have some sort of control over that situation, or she wanted to use that money that was prepaid to leave and go to Florida if something went wrong. But either way, Kendra, her whole family, it's a very sketchy situation. The largest belief theory is that she kind of tricked him into coming to, again, con him out of money, or she wanted something from him, and then she decided to get rid of him and run. I know that Eric's mom has attempted to meet his daughter numerous times. She almost did it, and then she backed out of it. I don't know what secrets they're hiding, but hopefully it comes to light soon, because the Michigan State Police Crime Lab is doing forensic testing on the car. The car is in their hands, so if there is anything of evidentiary value within that vehicle, it will likely be found. I'm sure it will take a little bit longer, but I'm hoping in the next couple of months, maybe there are some sort of answers. But that was so crazy to me because we all were so stressed out about the car and finding the car and the fact that now it's found. Like, how many other cases have we been like, man, this car needs to be found? Like, if the car was found, we could figure this out. And now finally this has happened for someone. So now we're on to the next update on Egypt Covington. This is the most recent update. This is literally happening as I'm saying this, so I'm sure there will be more updates to come. Maybe I'll just add them into my next couple of videos. But Egypt Covington, as a recap, was found dead in her home in Van Buren, Michigan on June 23rd, 2017 by her boyfriend, who initially was someone kind of under suspicion, obviously because he was the first person that was there to see her, but he was very quickly ruled out. She had a single gunshot wound to the head, and her hands had been bound together by Christmas lights, which was another kind of controversial, interesting point in the case. Authorities stated very early on that this likely was not something random, that this was someone that she knew, because Egypt would not have opened the door for just anyone, but there was no sign at all of forced entry. It appeared she did open the door and say hello to someone and then was pushed into her living room, and then she was killed. No one knew where these Christmas lights came from, so people believed that maybe someone knew where they were stored or someone brought them specifically, which would be kind of strange to kind of tie her up with. But no one really had any clue, even though they said it had to have been someone close, more than likely who would have done it, because Egypt was like one of the most well-loved people in that community. She was, I believe, a bartender for a while, and then she was also working for a beer company, and then she was also a singer and would perform at different places around the town. And she was just so well known, and she was so sweet and so talented. And there was not a single person out there that had anything against her. And then on November 5th, quite literally just days ago, two individuals were just out of nowhere arrested in connection with the murder of Egypt Covington. When these individuals were arrested, their names were not immediately released, and even as of right now, as far as I know. So on November 8th, one of the individuals was identified as 24-year-old Timothy Eugene Moore from Toledo, Ohio. He was formally arraigned on a homicide charge, and he was denied any bond. The second individual, as I stated, has yet to be identified, but there's no other information being released other than that. I have absolutely no idea how these individuals came about. They obviously have linked them pretty seriously, because they immediately went for charges and they immediately did not allow this first man bond. So maybe they're linked through DNA, or there's got to be something pretty serious. I have no clue if they knew her, or if this was just a random act of violence. I will update when I know more, but I'm so happy they finally are getting answers in this case, because it was devastating and it was so confusing, because there just was not a lot of evidence. When authorities looked at the crime scene, it made absolutely no sense. So however they managed to solve this, huge shout out to the police department. And now the very final update, which is one that I've been waiting to update you guys on for quite some time at this point. And this is another huge one, like absolutely massive. So this is an update on Crystal Rogers. She was last seen by her boyfriend, Brooks Hucks, at his family farm in July of 2015. And this has been a huge case, because there's other people they believe are tied to. I mean, it's just an Oxygen series has been done on this and other local murders. But according to Brooks, her boyfriend, he went to bed with Crystal there, and then he woke up and she was just gone, like left her children behind. He waited an odd amount of time, like way too long, to report her as missing, and he claimed that she likely went to like a family's house or friend's house. Maybe they got into like an argument. His information was very strange, and evidence ended up being found, and Brooks, along with his police officer brother, Nick Hawks, quickly fell under suspicion in the town. So Brooks eventually, I think after a few months, ended up being labeled the main suspect in the case. His story wasn't adding up. They found strange instances of his truck coming and going, and then they found strange instances of his brother's truck coming and going. They did all sorts of searches on the property. There was like a burn pit on the property where they worried that he might have disposed of her remains that way. And Crystal's father in particular really pushed to get information on this case. Like, they did not stop. This family stopped at nothing. They searched for her endlessly, and randomly, 1 year after Crystal's disappearance in 2016, her father was killed in this really bizarre hunting accident. He was hunting with his grandson. A rogue bullet just so happened to shoot him and kill him, and it was like the middle of a field. So a lot of people believed that he was getting too close to answers, so he was killed. No hunters or anyone came forward to claim that they accidentally may have shot him while hunting. Not to say that anyone would have. I don't think anyone would really, be, really eager to go and admit that. So that's, in my opinion, doesn't say all too much, but it was just very odd because according to a lot of people that have looked into it, the position in which someone would have had to have been, like, it was very clear he was not an animal. He was like beside his truck in the middle of a field at the edge of the woods. Basically, the entire case has been just finding the remains. Everyone knows that Brooks Hucks is more than likely involved, that his police officer brother more than likely helped him. There are hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of bizarre interviews with both of them. And in July, remains ended up being found. They were at the edge of Nelson County, near where Crystal Rogers went missing. Her car was found along the highway, abandoned. And it was very it was a very odd space. It was difficult to get to. I believe hunters more than likely found it. So authorities were called in. They were looking into it. They couldn't get to the body the way they wanted to, so they called in help from the FBI. And once the remains were fully retrieved, they were then sent by the FBI to Quantico, Virginia to be identified. Now, that was in July. They have yet to update anyone on what has been found, so we're still waiting to hear back on if the remains do in fact belong to Crystal Rogers. I've not seen the family state anything either. It's been months at this point. But what I do know is that after the remains were found in early August, Brooks Huck's home was searched and raided by the FBI, who have officially taken over the case. Something tells me that they have a strong gut feeling that the remains are more than likely Crystal's. But from Brooks' home, they took multiple boxes, keys, filing cabinets. There were, I think, a total of 9 different search warrants. So his house was only one of them. And then while his house was being searched and crawled all over by FBI agents, down the road at his brother's truck, which everyone believes is how her body may have been transported, was being searched by cadaver dogs. And so that's 2 of the 9 different search warrants. And I don't know what the rest of them were, but in total that day, there were 150 FBI agents all over the town performing different searches. So again, something tells me that they are pretty sure that these are Crystal's remains. I'm hoping they announce some of this soon. I cannot imagine what her family's feeling. She had so many children, you guys. She had so many people that cared about her. I just really hope their family gets answers. This is one of the cases that I have been so invested in since day one. The whole Oxygen series, I highly recommend you guys watch. I really hope something comes from this and someone is finally charged. So that is all of the updates that I have for you guys today. I definitely am going to be doing more update videos. I know that there are definitely a few more that I haven't covered in this one. I just didn't want this video to run too incredibly long. So I've created a list of all the different cases that I've covered, and I'm moving down the list from most recent to the oldest to find updates, and I'm just gonna have to keep doing these videos every couple of weeks for you to finally catch everything back up. And if there are any more changes to the updates that I've just given you, I'll throw those in the beginning of the other updates videos. So now on to what I was saying I was going to change when it comes to my upload schedule. And I wanted to say this for the end because I'm probably going to rant way too much and I didn't want to talk for 45 minutes before the video even started. So as I said in the beginning, I wanted to thank you guys for all the love and support that you showed on my last video. You guys noticed that the editing was different and there was just so much more time and attention and thought put into the video itself, not just the research, but the editing, everything top to bottom. And I have kind of decided that I'm not just going to post every Saturday anymore, and I know that's going to upset a lot of people. This has been the same schedule that I have had since I started my channel. Every single Saturday, same time, same place, and I loved the consistency of it, and knowing that you guys knew that a video would be out for you. But this decision did not come lightly. I've been thinking about this now for months, if not a year. But it just started to feel like I was having to shove every single case in one box, no matter the size, no matter the amount of information, no matter the extra effort that some cases took to find out information or, look through maps or form my own conclusions and theories. And it just started to feel like I had to just put a limit on every single case that I was looking into. And then, I'm just a very big creature of habit. I like structure. And so then on the weeks where I had a case that was not very large, didn't take a lot of time, I had all this extra time that I felt like I couldn't use. It's not that I couldn't, I just have a freaking complex in my head. I could have used it, but it started to feel very heavy. I felt like I was limiting cases. I wasn't able to put out as, quality content as I wanted. I would spend so much time trying to research gigantic cases that it felt like once I finally absorbed years and years of information in a case in a week, that I was burnt out and exhausted when I'd go to edit. And that is the final product. That is what everyone is seeing. That is how the information is being portrayed to anyone that watches my videos. And this isn't just fun and games. These are lives. Legal aspects are involved. I do not want to ever step on authorities' toes when it comes to an investigation. I never want to harm an investigation. I never want to put out false information. I never want to half-ass a video. So that's what it felt like I was doing. Every week started to feel just like a race where I was trying to get to the end with the best I possibly could. And I would put out a video, and 9 times out of 10, I was not pleased with it. Not to say it was bad, it just wasn't the work that I wanted to put out. It was not the level at which I wanted it to be. And so I decided I'm just not going to do that anymore. I am not going to keep myself in this race every single week. I'm not going to limit the effort and work and time that it takes to put into videos and into these cases. Not every case is a one size fits all at all. It's all different. Every case has different information, different amounts, takes different levels of like thinking and research and side research. And I don't want to do that because I do not think it's fair in the end to the victims and the families and anyone who watches the video and forms their opinion off of maybe a video that doesn't have every bit of information in it that I want to be in there. So as you've noticed, I'm sure this past month now, I'm just kind of uploading when a video is ready. I still am getting out typically around one video a week. This week, I'm even getting out 2 videos a week. Because I'm just not having to rush. I'm able to take my time, and my last video I was able to edit to the way that I wanted to edit. I was able to take more time for that as well, and you guys noticed it without me even saying anything. And that right there says and really solidifies in my head the decision that I made, because it made a huge difference to you guys, and I enjoyed the process a lot more than I had been. So basically, what I'm trying to say is I am simply uploading when a video is ready. But anyways, thank you guys so much for literally everything, for the kind words on my last video, for even noticing that there was a difference, for supporting my channel, for watching my videos, for giving me good suggestions, always having my back, always pushing me to be a better creator. But I'm going to go ahead and go, you guys. I hope you enjoyed finally having an update video. You've been asking for this for so long, and the level of joy it gives me to bring you these updates, and the fact that so many of them are so huge and such massive progressive steps for a lot of these cases makes it 10 times better. I will keep you guys updated along the way, and I will have another video out for you guys in a couple of days. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and go. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button to become a part of the Hallan fam. So hopefully we can bring them home together, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.